I was Hanny Usher, but Rico from RicoScores, and y'all know I had to come and break down day 4 of the 2024 Washington Commanders training camp practice. This was the first one where fans were allowed to go, so of course we have a lot more information and details, and a lot of opinions that we're going to throw in there as well. I'm going to shout out everybody that I can for a lot of the opinions that we're going to talk about in this video and a lot of the footage as well. Now, of course, big things that went on today. We had a couple of interceptions, most notably from the guy that I'm rooting for, the freak athlete alien himself, Tyler Owens. We had 2 interceptions, another one by QU Blue Kelly. We're going to talk about how the quarterbacks, especially like JAYDEN Daniels, had like an up and down day, whereas Marcus Mariota just had a terrible day. We're going to go position group by position group, quarterbacks, running backs, everything. A lot of really interesting things. Even Brandon Coleman started a left tackle at some point today. So Austin Eckler was making plays. We had some wide receivers, like if you're in the Mitchell Tinsley camp, you will be happy about what happened today. Tariq Castro-Fields getting some run with the starters at corner today. A lot of chaos and craziness going on. Really excited to break it all down, but before we do, make sure you stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, and stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Make sure you stay tuned for all of the content. Again, I'm gonna have you updated on every single training camp practice that goes down. Really appreciate y'all for staying tuned, for pulling up to every video, for leaving a like on every video, and also leaving comments, opinions, questions, concerns in every video as well. Make sure y'all stay tuned. I'm gonna have you updated for everything training camp. If you haven't already, make sure you go check out my video where I'm breaking down the starting defensive unit that we have so far. In base nickel defense, 2 linebackers, 1 extra DB. I did like a whole projection where I show you where everybody is on the field and everything like that, X's and O's, what our starting defense looks like so far through 1 week of training camp. And so make sure you go check out that video from earlier this morning, and also stay tuned throughout this entire video because we're going from quarterbacks all the way through the entire offense, the entire defense, and we also have some important special teams notes as well today. So before we dive into all of that, make sure you leave a like on that, and we're gonna go ahead and get into it. Let's get it. Adam. All right, and before we even get into practice all the way, before we start to dive into what actually happened during practice, first of all, just an announcement. I'm hearing that tomorrow will be the first day with pads on. Fans will be there again. That's great. It will be a military-themed practice. That's also great. But we're going to have pads on for the first time this offseason, so we're really ramping things up. And of course, first of all, just as a fan, I just want to see people actually hitting a little bit. Of course, don't hit too hard. Don't hurt your fellow teammates and things like that. You're going to need them when we get into this ugly onslaught of a schedule that we have to deal with in this upcoming regular season and hopefully postseason as well. But even outside of just, we can't wait to see real football, there's just certain positions you really can't evaluate outside of like having pads on with contact and things like that. Like the trenches, offensive line and defensive line without pads on, it's almost impossible to really evaluate these guys. I mean, you can look at footwork things like we talked about in day 3 breakdown that I did yesterday. Like Brandon Coleman was doing a great job of mirroring the movements of like Frankie Louvu, who's way smaller than him, more agile. Dante Fowler, he's a pass rush specialist. That's the reason he's on an NFL roster, because of his ability to get around tackles quickly. Brandon Coleman did a great job of using his length and footwork against those guys. That's something you can evaluate. But when it comes to strength, power, explosion, and just who has that dog in them, the grittiness, the angry streak and things like that, who's just straight up nasty in the trenches, we really can't evaluate that until we get some pads on. And then of course, once we get to the preseason games, we're going against other teams, you get to these joint practices against the Jets and the Dolphins, then we can really start to evaluate those things. But at least tomorrow being the first day of pads, we can at least look at offensive line and at least attempt to try to evaluate that, especially like Brandon Coleman, our 3rd round pick that we're hoping can start for us at left tackle as soon as week 1. But we'll see. I have some updates for him as well when we get to the offensive line part of this. But just to let you know, training camp always starts at 9 a.m. And again, the fans were here for the first time. So if you really think about it, this was the first time that fans could see JAYDEN Daniels in person. And man, look at the line in the parking lot just waiting to get into the practice. My boy Josh Taylor was there. Make sure you follow him on Twitter, subscribe to him on YouTube. He does things with Bleacher Report and everything like that. Make sure you stay tuned with him as well. But he was there at practice today. He's been going to Commanders practices for years, and he said this might be the longest line I've ever seen at a training camp. The fans are ready, and I love to hear that. I wasn't able to make it, but I love the fact that y'all were out there extremely deep. Apparently, I'm hearing that there were over 3,000 fans in attendance today. And you know, they pretty much have to limit it ticket wise, so there will probably be even more if they allow more people to get in. But they're pretty strict with how, like, you have to get a ticket through like a certain website. I don't remember if it's SeatGeek or whoever, but like there's a specific ticket you have to get, otherwise you can't just get in. You can't just walk in randomly without a pre-ordered ticket. So there'll probably be even more fans than that if they just opened it wide open, but I understand why they wouldn't. And then Dan Quinn also said that he noticed a difference already in the energy just with the fans at practice today compared to other practices where there were no fans. I mean, we had that one practice where the families were allowed to attend the very first practice of training camp, which again, shouts out to the leaders of this organization for even thinking of doing that. First training camp practice, let the players, families, and close friends pull up to the practice and watch and everything like that. That was really cool. But again, even compared to that practice, this was a completely different energy. He said, quote, "I felt it early this morning. Seeing people parking in the grass to get there early. It's a cool reminder of this historic fan base. Definitely brought up a good feeling of what is next here," unquote. And then Sam Fortier also pointed out the fact that he saw a few Jayden Daniels' jerseys on the way in, including a couple from LSU, but he did point out the fact that still, as far as most popular goes, you have Terry McLaurin and Sean Taylor from what he's seen. Now, there could actually be a different result depending on who you've seen and the different angles you've gotten, but it seems like there were a lot of Jayden Daniels, but Terry McLaurin and Sean Taylor probably still hold the crown. And then you also had a group of people, some fans that got there at 4:20 a.m., and they drove all the way from Montreal, Canada, and some of them also came from Massachusetts as well. They were not playing. Shouts out to those fans who are that dedicated. I have no excuse being in Atlanta. None at all. And then, of course, we always got to keep track of who was the first player onto the field to start practice. Mitch Tisler is always the guy keeping up with this, so if you always want to keep up with these things, he also does a great job evaluating the offensive line and really the whole team overall, but offensive line is like his calling card. Make sure you go follow Mitch Tisler per usual, but he keeps track of who's there first. You have Bryson Tremaine day one, you have Jayden Daniels and Sam Hartman kind of side by side day two, then Bryson Tremaine came back to take his crown day three, and then he continued the streak by taking the crown again day four as well, holding on to his belt of being the first player there. So now that is 3 out of 4 training camp practices that Bryson Tremaine has been the first guy there. And then you also see Terry McLaurin coming onto the field, and of course the fans are very excited to see him. I mean, again, one of the most popular jerseys out of all of the jerseys that are there for everybody that attended the practice has been Terry McLaurin consistently for now a couple of years at this point. And then also at a certain point, Terry McLaurin stopped to give 2 young fans a pair of his cleats and gloves before they even started getting to work at practice. So, I mean, just to go out of his way to do something like that is incredible. And even at the very end of this video, make sure you stay to the end because you're going to see Terry McLaurin and Jayden Daniels, you know, signing things for fans after practice as well. Luke McCaffrey was included in that group. And then also, Zach Selby pointed out the fact that somebody was in the stands with an Eagles jersey and he was promptly booed, of course, and there's just one every year. Somebody's always doing something, Eagles, Cowboys, or somebody, just to stir up trouble or whatever, and of course they're going to be booed. And then you also have Maryland Governor Wes Moore. He was in attendance at practice today, and Moore made it clear in his opening statement that it was important for him to be here today and the strong desire for the team stadium to remain in PG County in Landover, maybe next to it or whatever. I know most fans prefer for it to go back to the RFK site in DC, but Maryland, I'm not going to lie, potentially looks the most realistic based on what I'm seeing behind the scenes as far as legal things, political things, all that type of stuff. But just stay tuned for that. Of course, I'm going to keep y'all updated on any major information and hurdles we cross when we get there. But Wes Moore even said it himself, like he wanted to be here for the first open day practice open to fans for a reason. He really wanted to show how dedicated he was to keeping the Commanders in Maryland. Obviously, for good reason with him being the governor of Maryland, but still, he seems like he really cares. And then injury-wise, Tyler Owens returned to practice today and got himself a pick off of a Ben Sinnott drop. Now, we're not going to dive into that too much today, but that's a guy that missed the last practice we had a couple of days ago, but now he's here for day 4. He wasn't there for day 3. Also, shouts out to Ben Standig for pointing this out. Context lacking, but haven't seen Andrew Wiley in 11s today after he was out for several series late in yesterday's practice, day 3's practice as well. And he is here and he did unit drills, and not really seeing a significant injury for him, but he did not participate in team drills after missing some of the ones to end practice the last time they practiced. And then Nikki Javala also reported that Andrew Wiley said that he's dealing with some tightness, didn't necessarily say where, and that they're basically just being smart and overprotective at this point with the situation, and he'll be back at practice tomorrow starting at right tackle with the first teamers, which of course leaves open a spot for who started at right tackle for us today, who started at left tackle. We'll get there when we get to the offensive line portion of the video. Now let's talk about some of the coaching staff things. Usually when we're talking about coaches and what coaches said or what people said about the coaches, it's usually going to be centered around Dan Quinn. Per usual, that's the case today. So before practice, Dan Quinn said that he does not want to see fights during training camp. He said, quote, "If you lose your poise in the game, there are consequences. If you lose your poise at practice, there will be consequences," unquote. He seems very serious about this. Like, he's dead serious. They do not want fights at practice. They want high intensity, but they are not okay with there being fights at practice. You could tell that, you know, they're just not with all of the shenanigans and wasting time. Fighting equals time being wasted that you could be using towards developing a certain skill set for everybody involved. So I understand why he's so serious about it. And if you wanted to see the clip, this is like a quick 30-second clip. So if you don't care about Dan Quinn voicing his opinions on fights and practice himself and this upcoming clip that I'm going to show you, then just go ahead and skip ahead like 30 seconds.
We haven't had conversations about that, but we will. But what I do know, like, the animosity and fighting is not going to be part of what we do. You know, championship teams figured out they don't have ways that, you know, get sideways in doing that, so it won't be part of what we do. If you lose your poise, you know, in a game, there's consequences. If you lose your poise at practice, there'll be consequences. But no, it's nothing that I've had to address yet. I did early in the OTAs to make sure that didn't get that way.
Dan Quinn also talked about his time on the East Coast and said that he's well aware of the historic nature of this fan base and football in Washington. He even said that Cowboys owner Jerry Jones even told him, quote, "That's such an important fan base. You're the right man for that," unquote. That's a very loaded quote. First of all, the fact that Jerry Jones is acknowledging the fact that the burgundy and gold fan base is a staple in the NFL. We just need to start winning on the field to where everybody else can realize that. It's a lot of the older people realize, yeah, man, that burgundy and gold fan base is serious. It's the younger people that may not necessarily realize that, especially a lot of the kids. But that's also the second half of that quote, the fact that Jerry Jones told Dan Quinn himself, "You're the right man for that." Now, of course, that is his previous owner of the team, where Dan Quinn is the defensive coordinator. So, of course, he probably would have his blessing and get compliments from a guy like that. But still, just for him to go get a head coaching job and Jerry Jones to compliment him like that, even after he's leaving the team that Jerry Jones owns, I feel like that's pretty significant. Dan Quinn also said that the practices are starting to extend deeper and deeper as they get further into training camp. So guys like Sam Hartman will start to get more and more reps in each practice, because right now, of course, the starters are priorities, and then everybody else kind of gets the scraps and the crumbs after that. But as we get further and further into practice, you will have some of the guys deeper in the depth chart start to get more reps and show what they can do. And it's a good thing too, because Sam Hartman actually looked pretty good today, which we'll talk a little bit about later. But of course, when we're talking about quarterbacks, we're mainly focused on JAYDEN Daniels, because ideally no other quarterback ever throws a pass for us for the next 15 plus years other than JAYDEN Daniels, I'm hoping. And then also, before practice started, Dan Quinn grabbed the mic and addressed the fans before the whole practice even started. He said, quote, "You're going to see a team you can be really proud of," unquote. If you care to see that clip, I'm about to play it for you. It's 40 seconds long. If you do not care, go ahead and skip ahead like 39, 40 seconds.
So to have the first day of open practice and for you to be here and to show this support to the team and to the players, we can't express to you how happy that makes us to have you guys here, man. So please give yourself a hand. All right, as we're going today, you're going to see a team that you're going to be really proud of, how hard they battle, how hard they compete, and they're absolutely going to be going for it. So we can't wait to get this whole thing connected with you, with them, home field advantage, everything that we want to create together. So let's get it rocking.
And then My boy Mark Tyler at Hogshaven at Tiller56, another great follow on Twitter. He brought up a great point. He said, guys we haven't heard much from to date that I'd love to see some reports on. Ben Sinnott, you're going to get that. Ricky Strongberg, Braden Daniels, Marcus Rosemary-Jacksaint, I agree, that's a Georgia Bulldog. Quan Martin, you're going to get that. Nick Allegretti, and also Mason Brooks. And I love the fact that he brought that up because I was thinking the same thing. Like, where is the Quan Martin news? Where are the Ben Sinnott highlights and news and things like that? Why aren't we talking about these guys like really much at all? I haven't seen anybody talk about them that have attended the practice. Of course, a lot of the attention is going to Jayden Daniels, but I would love just a couple of updates on some of the other guys, especially a guy like Quan Martin, who's going to be a starter in this safety group for us as literally our starting free safety is going to be out there a lot. We're going to be depending on him to ball out for us. So luckily though, Mark Tyler tweeted that at like 8:59 a.m. before practice even started at 9 a.m. And we will talk about some of those guys in this video because people did start to pay some attention to them. Now that instead of it just only being reporters allowed, now that it's open to fans, you're going to get a lot more eyes and people paying attention to different things. So now we're going to start to hear about a lot more players. So I'm really excited about that. Also, before we actually start to get into practice, we're going to start with the quarterbacks, of course. At a certain point, Dan Quinn made the players restart that bag drill, and basically people are saying that they didn't seem hype enough this time around, and fans didn't really seem to know what to make of the situation. It was pretty quiet and things like that. I guess a little awkward, but either way, that typical bag drill that I have shown y'all a clip of pretty much at the start of every single practice that I've broken down. Apparently today there wasn't a lot of energy and nobody really felt the need to upload a clip of it, so this will be the first practice that I've broken down that I believe we do not have that bags drill clip of everybody being hyped, the coaches and players. I don't know what happened today. I don't know what was different in it with the energy. It seems like everybody else is more energetic, but for some reason that drill just didn't feel like it. Now moving on to the quarterbacks, let's talk about Jayden Daniels, of course. And of course, at the start of the practice, before they even really get into everything, especially team-wise, when they're still in the individual things, you have Tyler Biadasz snapping the ball to Jayden Daniels as often as possible before they even really get going into practice. That just needs to be something that we just rehearse over and over and over again. It needs to be perfected. We don't want any bobbled snaps leading to turnovers for absolutely no reason. And then you also see in this clip right here, Jayden Daniels working on his mobility, ball security, accuracy drills to start the day as well. This just seems to be something that he's doing quite often. And now let's get into what actually happened at practice. So shouts out to Josh Taylor because he pointed out the fact that it seems like the ball comes out of Jayden Daniels' hands so clean. His motion is so consistent. Again, the main reason that we could bank on the fact that Jayden Daniels will at least be a really good quarterback at the NFL level. We could debate about whether he'll be like a top 5, top 10, top 15 or whatever, but I trust the fact that he'll at the very least be really good and better than anything we've had here in a long time is because of his consistent mechanics. CJ Stroud coming out of Ohio State, the one thing you can bank on with him was the mechanics, the throwing motion, the consistency as far as those things go. Jayden Daniels is very similar in that way. They come from the same area, i.e. their childhood friends growing up in the competitive area that is, especially for quarterbacks, and they know each other very well. They even worked out with each other this offseason, so there should be no surprise that Jayden Daniels is also really good at something that CJ Stroud is also really good at. Now moving on, there was a moment where Jayden Daniels escaped down the sideline and got a big roar from the crowd as he sprinted for a big gain using his legs. And what I'm hearing is people are saying that it would have been a 40-yard gain or more. That's how big of a gain it was. And I'm also hearing that it wasn't a situation where it's like training camp. Of course, he's going against his own team, so guys are trying to go easy on him because he's a franchise quarterback, so they're not trying to hit him. And then he does that thing where like he would have been tackled somewhere, but he continues to run just to kind of complete the drill. That's what you're supposed to do in practice. But no, I'm hearing that he legitimately got off for a 40+ yard gain with his legs. That like even if people were taking it very seriously and they were trying to tackle him, they wouldn't have been able to. That's what I'm hearing. And if that is really the case, then it's about to be scary season for opposing teams, man. But of course, the Commanders coaches do not want this to happen a lot in practice because first of all, they don't want Jayden Daniels relying on his legs too often in practice because then that will, you'll potentially encourage bad habits and that will potentially lead to him doing it too much in games. And then also, secondly, if Daniels is killing our defense with his legs, is that a bad sign for our defense dealing with other mobile quarterbacks when we get into this regular season? But again, outside of that big run, Jayden Daniels also has some notable moments in practice. A pretty up and down day. Linnell Willingham tweeted at one point at 9:53 a.m. that it was a rough start to the 11 on 11s for Jayden Daniels. He's been high on a few balls, and let's see if he bounces back. But then Ben Standig tweeted soon after that, just a few minutes after that, Daniels sharper as practice continues. Ripped the sideline throw to Bryson Tremaine in sevens, the guy that's always getting to practice first. And another niche that he has is that he's our only tall receiver. After him at 6'5", Luke McCaffrey at 6'2" is your tallest receiver in that room. So maybe if he makes enough plays and stands out enough, this is a guy that could potentially compete and grab maybe one of those last roster spots. We'll see. But then Ben Standig also continued talking about Jayden Daniels, said came back in with the 11s and hit Terry McLaurin and stride up the seam as well. And then the way that he threw the pass, Terry McLaurin was able to get some yards after the catch after the throw as well. So Daniels started to heat up at a certain point. And then my boy Jamal at Let Maul Tell It. Make sure you follow all of these people. That's why I'm shouting them out. They go to the practices. They do great breakdowns after the practices and everything like that. But he tweeted, not if this had been a thing before today. I mean, nobody's just really sure because, again, a lot of us fans haven't been able to go to practice and see every single throw and play of practices so far. But he went on to say, but a couple of times there were Jayden Daniels and his wide receivers just weren't on the same page. In sevens, De'Ami Brown broke inside on a curl when Jayden was expecting him to break out. Then another time, Terry McLaurin curled versus a zone where Jayden Daniels threw it deep, expected Terry McLaurin to keep running. And in 11s, at a certain point, Jayden threw in front of a wide receiver who sat in his route. It just sat still, and Jayden Daniels tried to lead him, so he missed them there as well. So clearly there's some serious miscommunications going on right now between Jayden Daniels and the receivers. We haven't really heard much of this in previous practices, so I don't know if that's just because the select few reporters that have been allowed to go to practice haven't tweeted about it and haven't acknowledged it and talked about it, or maybe this was just an off day for Jayden Daniels. I'm not exactly sure. I'm just always keeping it 100% with y'all, completely transparent and giving you every bit of information that I have at my disposal. I'm giving you all of the notes that I have, all of the tweets, all of the clips, everything. So I know as much as y'all know, basically. If you've been watching all of my breakdowns, you know literally every bit of detail that I know. JB Finley even tweeted some sloppy offense and simulated 2-minute drills. Pass gets dropped and then a bad snap out of shotgun. It was just a slightly ugly day overall, not even just Jayden Daniels, but the quarterbacks in general, especially Marcus Mariota. At least Jayden Daniels had great moments, a couple of low moments, great moments, couple of low moments. Marcus Mariota, from what I'm hearing, was just straight up bad. And then Sam Hartman also had some pretty impressive moments, but of course, he's out there with the backups of the backups, so how much can you really evaluate him? Going back to Jayden Daniels, my boy Josh Taylor said Daniels is starting to find a rhythm. So a few minutes later after the tweets that I just read to you, like another 15, 20 minutes later, Josh Taylor is tweeting Daniels is starting to find a rhythm in the 2-minute drill, hit Olamide Zaccheaus on an out route. This was at 10:38 a.m. Then at 10:46 a.m., shouts out to my boy Bleeding Burgundy and Gold at Bleeding No G, and then it's BNG on Twitter. Make sure you follow him. Super diehard Burgundy and Gold fan. You see him a lot with Rio Robinson. Great analysis. As usual, he said, offense just beat the defense with a perfect play call. Bobby Wagner comes screaming free on the blitz, unblocked, and then Jayden Daniels gets the ball out and hits Jahan Dotson on a middle screen. Perfect counter to what the defense drew up. Great play by the offense. And then Bleeding Burgundy and Gold also said, practice over. Rough day for the offense in the final team session. So many drop passes and missed throws from all of the quarterbacks. So not just Jayden Daniels. And again, speaking of all of the quarterbacks, Marcus Mariota, I mean, not only did he throw an interception, but he almost threw another one as well. And then, again, Sam Hartman had a pretty decent day. Dan Quinn even talked about Sam Hartman before practice and said that Sam Hartman is all in. He's getting here early and staying late. He's not getting as many reps, but he's doing whatever he can to get the most out of the time that he is able to actually get reps and practice and things like that. Now moving on to the running back position. The only real thing that I have from this today was my boy Josh Taylor pointing out the fact that Austin Eckler had a big run up the right side of the field at some point in practice. It was a great cut up the C gap and hit the open field, and he said that Austin Eckler's cuts look sharp right now. So it looks like he may have found the fountain of youth maybe a little bit. We'll see. Moving on to the wide receivers. Luke McCaffrey apparently had a pretty good practice today. At one point, he did like a really good, nuanced, really like professional, technical route, and where he was able to get a lot of separation, great route, made a really good catch and everything like that. I'm loving what I'm hearing from Luke McCaffrey, potentially our third best wide receiver. Really excited. And Dan Quinn talked about Luke McCaffrey before practice and said that Luke McCaffrey's skill set is more refined than he thought, and said, quote, "but I'm not surprised based on his makeup," unquote. So just to further back the moment that he had today in practice where he ran like a really good refined route, got open, a lot of separation from the DB covering him, and made a good catch. Dan Quinn, even before that happened, before the practice even started, spoke about Luke McCaffrey being more refined and further ahead in his development than they expected when they drafted him. So Luke McCaffrey's stock going up potentially, we'll see. Also, shouts out to Ben Standig for pointing this out, because we talked about Bryson Tremaine earlier being the first to practice. I even talked a few minutes ago about, with him being the only tall receiver we have in the room, is there a chance of him making the roster? Ben Standig pointed out the fact that this is how you become a Tischler All-Star, consistent early morning go-getter. I've kept Tremaine on my roster long shot list from last season. Excellent size, especially for a really small wide receiver room, good hands, and can help on special teams. Hasn't popped so far in camp that Ben Standig has noticed so far, but there is an opportunity for him here. We'll see. Then you also have Mitchell Tinsley showing out. He had a pretty good day in practice, like this clip right here before they even got in the team drills. Really good catch, keeping both feet in bounds here. And then there was a moment where he was being covered by Mike Davis, who was the only one to get an interception on Jayden Daniels so far in training camp. He got it on him day 3 of practice, the previous practice that we had, not today, but the previous one. Mitch Tinsley was lined up against him and had a great sideline catch against him with great coverage too. It was good coverage apparently by Michael Davis, but Mitch Tinsley just with a great catch was able to get both feet in bounds. Of course, the fans love it. They were hyped. So shouts out to Mitch Tinsley for trying to, keep his name involved in the mix as far as this wide receiver depth situation goes, because right now that's probably one of our most competitive group as far as like who's going to make the 53-man roster. This receiver group, boy, it's serious. There's some talent back there, real talent. Now moving on to the tight end group, you have this clip right here where you're seeing them working on a really cool drill where like they're trying to catch the ball in small windows. They have a guy in front kind of distract them and act like they're going to catch it, basically kind of like a linebacker in coverage in front of them, and they have to remain concentrated and able to like, okay, even though this guy and these hands are in the way, I got to focus on where the ball is and secure the catch and things like that. I think it's a pretty cool drill, just real quick if you wanted to see it. And then we got to talk Ben Sinnott, because at one point today, he had a really nice one-handed catch from Jayden Daniels. It looked great. The ball was even behind him, so not even a great throw by Jayden Daniels, and Ben Sinnott still found a way to come down with it, even with one hand. His potential is limitless, but at the same time, he had a pretty down day overall. Again, like I said, I'm going to keep it 1,000 out with y'all every time with these breakdowns. If somebody's having a good or a bad day, we're going to talk about both. He had that highlight of a one-handed catch, but outside of that, from what I'm hearing, it wasn't a really good day overall. Really hasn't had the training camp that a lot of people expected him to have at this point. Maybe he's going to develop a little bit slower than we expected. You see Luke McCaffrey, Johnny Newton, and Mike Sanverstell, and even Jayden Daniels are ahead of schedule. Jordan McGee is ahead of schedule. We're going to talk about him when we get to the linebacker group of this breakdown. But it seems like Ben Sinnott may be one of the guys that may not be developing as quickly as we'd hope, but no worry, because we still have a really deep tight end room. We'll see how it goes. But either way, and again, it's still only day 4 of training camp, so we could get the preseason. He could be fully ready to go and looking like the best tight end in the class, maybe outside of my Georgia dog Brock Bowers. But either way, Linnell Willingham pointed out the fact that he tweeted at 9:51 a.m. one guy who has been relatively quiet with a few drops throughout the first 4 days, Ben Sinnott. And right afterwards, Armani Rogers made a diving catch over the middle of the field. And so, I was super excited to get Armani Rogers news. There's probably no bigger Armani Rogers fan in this fan base outside of me. I love his potential. Again, I'm screaming Darren Waller potential without the off the field concerns. Let's get it. Armani Rogers news is great. But again, at one point in time, Ben Sinnott had a drop, and immediately afterwards, Armani Rogers had a really good catch. And Zach Selby even pointed out the fact that the team has some really high hopes for him, especially before his injury, and we'll see if he can recapture some of that interest by making plays in training camp. I hope that he can. I hope he shows out in preseason. But again, Ben Sinnott had that drop, and it was like a drop on a diving catch attempt, so it wasn't like the easiest catch, but it was still a drop. And then that's when my boy Tyler Owens got his interception. Y'all know I'm going to super talk about that and hype him up when we get to the safety part of this video. And shouts out to my boy Bleeding Burgundy and Gold once again, because he tweeted at 10:48 a.m. not falling for the Cole Turner trading camp hype for the third year in a row. Nope, not going to do it. And first of all, that's hilarious. But second of all, I'm right with him. And third, that sounds like to me Cole Turner's making plays in training camp. If people are trying to convince themselves not about to fall for the Cole Turner trick again, sounds like he's making plays in training camp. We'll see if it actually translates into the regular season. Now moving on to the offensive line, I'm hearing that Cornelius Lucas got to start at right tackle. Guess who was starting at left tackle? Third round rookie Brandon Coleman. Yes, sir. So is this it? Have they seen enough? Is Brandon Coleman ready to take over as your starting left tackle? Because if Brandon Coleman is ready to start at left tackle, not forcing him into it, because he is the most naturally talented tackle out of the group that we have. I mean, Samuel Cosmi, maybe you could argue if you put him at right tackle or left tackle, maybe he's the most talented tackle we have on the team. But right now, he's a right guard, purely a right guard, future all-pro right guard. I'm telling y'all that right now. I'm saying it now. But my point is, out of the tackle group, Brandon Coleman's easily the most naturally talented. The problem is he ready? And like where we're at right now with him getting snaps at left tackle today, should we read into this too much? Or is this just a simple situation where Andrew Wiley was hurt today, and he got hurt somewhere towards the end of last practice, day 3 of practice, and maybe Brandon Coleman was only starting at left tackle today because Andrew Wiley got hurt. But then it makes you think, If Andrew Wiley's hurt at right tackle, why does that mean Brandon Coleman's going to left tackle? Wouldn't that mean just Brandon Coleman fills in for Andrew Wiley directly at right tackle, and Cornelius Lucas continues to start at left tackle? What made them think, okay, Cornelius Lucas, I know you've been starting at left tackle, but we're gonna move you to right tackle now that Andrew Wiley's hurt, and we'll allow Brandon Coleman to get the left tackle snaps? And I didn't hear anything good or great about how Brandon Coleman performed at left tackle today, but hey, at least we didn't hear any bad. And then there were a lot of other combinations of offensive line that they were doing today. Shouts out to Zach Selby for pointing out the fact that Brandon Coleman played both right and left tackle today. Left tackle was only just a part of the practice. Michael Dieter, our backup interior offensive lineman, got reps at left guard today, even though he's also gotten reps at center at times, because he is really more so, if anything, a backup center for our offensive line. And then Trent Scott even got reps at left tackle today as well. And Linnell pointed out the fact that Michael Dieter was at left guard with the first team, the last 2 team periods. So not only just left guard in general, but with the starters at a point in time. And Josh Taylor also pointed out offensive line wise at 10:08 a.m. that the run blocking in 11-on-11s looks much improved. So this offensive line, at the very least, we know, at least we can assume and hope that they will be better at run blocking this year moving forward than they were in 2023 under Eric Bieniemy. I'm really excited about that. Now let's move on to the defense. And before we even dive into like specific position groups in the defense, you can see these tip drills that the players are doing right here, and I like this. Again, they're being very specific and very intentional with how much they're making sure they work on even the smallest and most minute details as far as the sport of football goes. Doesn't matter if you're a defensive back, we need you to be able to catch passes any scenario, whether it's through traffic, where they had that one drill where they even had DBs having to tap both feet in and basically simulating an interception. They were running those drills with the wide receivers having to catch the pass and get both feet in bounds after going through some bags. DBs had to do the same thing. Now you have another scenario where, say the ball isn't coming to you clean, it gets tipped by the defensive line or whoever. You need to be able to make those interception catches as well. So here you see that drill going on in this clip right here. Now let's get to the D-line, man. Well, first of all, shouts out to Craig Hoffman because he said on his podcast with John Com that Washington has not been using Davis at the linebacker position much, which we already knew. We knew that he's basically making a full switch to edge rusher. But the most notable thing was that he said, but rather trying to convert him to an edge rusher, which may not be going as well as they expected. That's very interesting. That is not good news for Jamin Davis at all. And even Mark Tyler pointed out the fact that, hey, this would add more fuel to the fire for just how bad Ron Rivera was at evaluating talent. That's a good point. And my boy Bleeding Burgundy and Gold has a funny way to describe Jamin Davis so far in training camp when we get towards the end of this video. But Jamin Davis so far, basically, I want to point out the fact that things are not looking too good for him. Then Dante Fowler-wise, Dan Quinn highlighted his speed and pass rushing ability and thought that he would be someone who could add real value to the team, especially on third downs. Like I've already talked about, even just in my video earlier this morning when I broke down the starting defense in like a base nickel where we have 2 linebackers and 5 defensive backs. I pointed out the fact that Dante Fowler will see the field a lot on obvious passing downs, third and long, things like that. He's going to contribute. I'm really excited about that, so I'm not surprised. Then every NFL team did like a quick little one snapshot of every team's training camp practice. Every representative of ESPN for their respective teams. Of course, our ESPN representative is John Com, and he chose to talk about our defensive line. Other teams talked about other different parts of their respective teams. John Com talked about defensive line. He said Washington's defensive line did not always like what it was asked to do under the previous coaching staff. According to numerous players, they hated being asked to stop using techniques they felt worked for them, and it led to various issues throughout the past 4 years. A touted group never quite filled their potential. Now, new defensive lines coach Daryl Tapp said they will suggest techniques for players to use, but if they're not comfortable, they won't force them to continue doing so. But tackle Jonathan Allen said that there is another difference. He said, quote, I really think it's about the little details. We're really focusing on the small stuff, the get off, the first step, the first 6-inch step, your hands, your pad level, and really just repetition. So it's nothing groundbreaking that we're doing. It's just consistency and a mindset that we're playing with, unquote. And I love that. And you already saw the evidence from other training camp breakdowns that I've done, the clips of like a player do 1 rep where they attack a coach or a bag, and then like Daryl Tapp, our defensive lines coach, and Sharif Floyd, our assistant defensive lines coach, will tell them, all right, well, instead of doing it that way, like show us the way that you do it. Okay, we'll see how you do it. And then instead of that, all right, let's coach you up. How about you move your feet like this? You change your stance like this. Now try it again. And then you see immediate results of a way more explosive step, getting more power, and basically almost knocking the coach on the ground. I've literally shown you those clips in other training camp breakdowns. It's amazing. So it seems like this coaching staff is really getting greatness out of this defensive line. I'm really excited. They may finally live up to the potential that we was hoping for the past few years. Now moving on to the linebacker group, Dan Quinn talked about Jordan McGee. Even more Jordan McGee hype. Frank Iluvu just talked about him 3 days ago and said that he epitomizes the Commanders' new defensive approach, and that he's basically another member of the running around, flying around, and making plays brigade, and he's already further ahead in his development than people expected. Well, Ben Standig also pointed out the fact that Quinn said that he already likes his athleticism and energy. That already really stands out about Jordan McGee, and very pleased with what the rookie linebacker has shown in that group. Dan Quinn also said that Jordan McGee has rare speed and a ton of burst, and quote, he's off to an excellent start at training camp, unquote. I'm super excited to hear that, because right now he's our third linebacker. Again, Jamin Davis playing poorly or not, it doesn't really matter. He's an edge rusher right now, whether he's been balling out in training camp or not sticking out at all, which it seems like he's not sticking out. Either way, he's an edge rusher. Jordan McGee is your third linebacker on the depth chart, and I think he's going to be great. I'm very high on him, but we still need him ready to play week 1 of the regular season. Otherwise, our defense will suffer for it, and I'm just very optimistic, and I'm pretty confident that he will be ready. Then going back to my boy Bleeding Burgundy and Gold again, he said this at 10:57 a.m. The linebacker core is filthy. Maniacs flying all over the place. Luvu jumped on an out route to Eckler like he was prime Deion Sanders. This linebacker group is going to be a huge transformation going from the 2023 season to the 2024, and I'm super excited. And the fact that people are seeing it in real life and noticing, like, yeah, this is a huge difference going from Cody Barton, Jamin Davis, and David Mayo to Bobby Wagner, Frankie Luvu, and Jordan McGee. Huge difference. Now moving on to the cornerback position, again, Tariq Castro-Fields, like I foreshadowed in the intro, had a great day today. He had some moments, but most importantly, he was out there with the starting defense at outside corner alongside Emmanuel Forbes. So at a certain point today, Tariq Castro-Fields and Emmanuel Forbes were your starting outside corners with the starters. And Linnell even pointed out the fact that Tariq has had a good camp, and basically that's what's led to him getting these starting reps, these first team reps. So if you're in that group of Tariq Castro-Field truthers, and have been saying for a while, because I've been seeing people in my comment section saying don't sleep on Tariq Castro-Fields, this is your time to take your credit in the comment section, because I'm hearing great things from him. There was even a point in practice where he had a really nice pass breakup on Mitchell Tinsley. He was right there. And basically Mitchell Tinsley, it was a great route. It was a great throw from whichever quarterback threw it, but Tariq Castro-Fields, just better defense. Good offense, better defense. And what's really impressive about that is that both of those guys have had a great camp so far. Again, we already just talked about Mitchell Tinsley and the hype that's growing for him from the camp that he's had so far, especially the day that he had today. Same thing with Tariq Castro-Fields. So that was really like a battle right there. That was a really fun battle of two standouts from camp so far, butting heads and having a good matchup. Tariq Castro-Fields won that matchup, but it's not like my main point is he didn't win that matchup against a backup or a slouch. That was Mitchell Tinsley, who's been balling out so far in training camp. And then also, in the spirit of mixing things up, of course, they got back to Benjamin St-Juste and Emmanuel Forbes being the starting corners for 11-on-11 drills with the starting defense at a certain point. But they wanted to throw Tariq Castro-Fields out there at a certain point with the starters just to kind of see. And again, he earned that. That wasn't just random. He's been balling out with the backups. Let's see what he looks like with the starters. Also, shouts out to George Carmi, because he brings up a great point. I see the positive in it, but George Carmi also brings up a good point about what may be negative about if you're looking at it from a different lens on this cornerback group and all of the shuffling going on. He said on Twitter, the shuffling at cornerback is somewhat concerning. It seems like they are dabbling with different duos, which is good in theory, but also means there aren't any standouts. If so, they'd be entrenched in those two standouts as being the staples at your starting cornerback positions. Cornerback is definitely a position I'm monitoring moving forward, and I'm right with you, George Carmi. I see the positive side, but I also see the negative side, like you're saying. Definitely something to watch for the remainder of training camp, especially going into preseason. Then Dan Quinn talked about how they're exploring different ways to utilize Sam Restill and his skill set. He said that his skill set offers plenty of versatility, but they also don't want to take him away from what he does best of being just an elite slot corner, which he's potentially going to be. But Dan Quinn said that they're basically gauging his skill set with his quickness and his ball skills, and seeing how that could even help them on special teams as well. And then Q Blue Kelly had an interception on Marcus Mariota after the defense made a great adjustment and switched the coverage pre-snap, with Jeremy Reeves leading the way for communication on the back end. It was a wide receiver set. Shouts out to Chris Russell for providing this information. I forgot to shout him out before the tweet started. But basically, the breakdown is, first of all, this is a big compliment towards Jeremy Reeves. Apparently, the defense came out looking at a certain set, saw what the offense was doing and what they were showing them with 4 wide receivers. Jeremy Reeves is the one that yelled to everybody, let's change it up, let's switch it up to this, and then they were able to get an interception off of it. So great play by Q Blue Kelly to get the interception on Marcus Mariota, who again had a really bad day overall. But shouts out to Jeremy Reeves big time for putting everybody in position to get that interception to happen. He was the catalyst for that interception and being made. Now moving on to the safety group, of course, couldn't wait any longer. My boy, undrafted free agent Tyler Owens, the freak athlete himself, finally returned to practice today after missing the previous practice day 3 of training camp, and snagged an interception off of a deflective pass. And I'm telling y'all, don't sleep on his chance to make the roster. Logan Paulson even spoke on him a couple of days ago, talking about that he's been a really big standout in special teams so far. He's looked really good in some of the weird drills that they're doing that some guys haven't been able to adjust to. Tyler Owens is on it right immediately. And this is a guy that no matter what they throw at him, he looks great in special teams. Maybe not necessarily defensively yet, but now he's gotten an interception under his belt. And so people are also saying that play where he got the interception off of the deflection, off of the Ben Sinnott drop, that it was really his athleticism on display, and that maybe other safeties couldn't have made the same play that he did. And even though he's still a raw player, you can't really teach that athleticism, man. You just can't, especially the athleticism to the level where he is, where I could safely and confidently say that he's the most athletic player on our entire roster. Jeremy Chin is probably second, and then there's just everybody else on the roster as far as athleticism goes. Nobody on this team is more athletic than Tyler Owens. So if he's starting to figure it out mentally, we may have somebody here, because this guy's either unplayable, complete trash, or all pro. I don't really see an in between with the elite athleticism has. Once that switch clicks mentally for him, instinctually, IQ and awareness and things like that, I mean, with that level of athleticism, you can't really be in the middle. You're either going to be bad or you're going to be great. There's really no middle for a guy like that. Shouts out to Bleeding Burgundy and Gold, because he pointed out something that I already talked about this morning when I showed y'all my projection for the starting defense so far through just a few practices of training camp, that it seems like Jeremy Chin and Quan Martin are pretty much a starting safety tandem right now, which goes back to the point that George Carmi was making. In the spirit of just trying things and switching things up, you see on the offensive line, we're mixing it up. You see in the cornerback group, we've been mixing it up as far as who the starters are. But in contrast, the safety group, it's been Jeremy Chin and Quan Martin pretty much the whole time. So that just goes to show that, yeah, maybe the cornerback group isn't as solid as we hoped, because if we really had two dominant corners right now, they wouldn't even be doing all of the mixing up that they're doing right there with the cornerback group, where just like how the safety group, it's been Quan Martin and Jeremy Chin the whole time. Then also shouts out to Chris Russell for pointing out the fact that Quan Martin was just a heat-seeking missile. He tweeted this at 10:37 a.m. in the flat on a shovel pitch tossed to Eckler. Maybe he would have missed the tackle, who knows, but he read it and likely would have blown it up. So Quan Martin making elite plays. I mean, he's already one of the most explosive safeties to ever touch the combine. I think he had one of the highest verticals of all time for a safety. But then now that he's getting it mentally and the game is slowing down for him, he's seeing things before it happens. He would have completely blown up Austin Eckler on a play, which I believe would have been a loss of yards. I'm telling you, man, Quan Martin is that guy. I'm happy that we're finally getting Quan Martin news, but I feel like it's more so been a situation where we haven't been getting Quan Martin news so far in training camp, because he's just such a dependable guy. We already know he's great. We can move on and focus on other guys. This is not somebody we need to focus on, and I'm happy that today we're starting to see more from him. Bleeding Burgundy and Gold pointed out the fact that look out for Quan Martin this year. Bro is everywhere today. He might end up being the turnover magnet in this scheme. So again, look out for Quan Martin. Shouts out to Bleeding Burgundy and Gold for the praise there. Now, special teams wise, players catching punts today. You had Jamison Crowder, Dax Milne, Casimir Allen, Demir Bird, Jahan Dotson, and Emmanuel Forbes. And as you notice, there are some starters in there, but I do want to point out the fact that Emmanuel Forbes did fumble a punt today, so maybe he's like last place in the run-in for starter punt returner. We'll see. But Dan Quinn even addressed the fact that there are some starters back there practicing punt returns. He said, quote, "There is value there," unquote, in having starters serve as returners on punt and kick returns when they make big plays. Also, the new kick return rules present quite the unknown. Quote, "There's a lot to find out about that," unquote. So that's the reason as to why they have some starters back there like Jahan Dotson and Emmanuel Forbes even practicing the punt returns. Even though Emmanuel Forbes, even when they subbed in Tariq Castro-Fields with the starters, they didn't take Emmanuel Forbes off the field. They took Benjamin St-Juste off the field. Does that mean Emmanuel Forbes is our corner number 1, Benjamin St-Juste 2, and then maybe Michael Davis 3, and then Tariq Castro-Fields is working his way up the depth chart? Who knows? But either way, even Emmanuel Forbes, who's been going toe-to-toe with Terry McLaurin, has been back there working on punts. But again, he had a fumble today with punt returns, so maybe they're going to stop asking him to do that. And then you have Sam Fortier, who pointed out the fact that the kicking situation is a growing concern in Commanders camp right now. Ramiz Ahmed with his second right goalpost doink in as many days. So now 2 days in a row, he's hit the goalpost on the right. That is terrible news, man. And Chris Cooley even quote tweeted this and said, Matt Coughlin, who led the UFL in field goal percentage with a 94.1% in 2024, and his only miss, literally the only miss he had, came from a 50-plus yarder. If the kicking issues continue, wouldn't mind bringing him in to compete. I'm surprised with those stats. He hasn't been brought in to compete already. But right now, just to let you know, kicker is a big concern for us right now. Like I've been talking about for the past week, like I've been talking about for weeks now, actually, even before training camp started, be on the lookout for this kicker situation, and we need to bring in some competition. It's getting a little scary because you can win or lose games because of a bad kicker. I'm really afraid of that. And then Nikki Javala, I have a few people. We have Nikki Javala, we have Mason Kinahan, and then we have my boy Bleeding Burgundy and Gold. They kind of did like their synopsis and overall review and their main takeaways from practice. Starting with Nikki Javala, she said Andrew Wiley has hardly been seen at right tackle in team drills, and then the Commanders also still need a kicker, but we knew that. And pre-snap penalties on the O-line are alarming right now. Happy day 4 of training camp. So she basically just pointed out a lot of the bad that's going on. Andrew Wiley, we still got to see what's going on with the injury situation. The Commanders have a really bad kicker situation going on, and the offensive line has pre-snap penalties running amok right now. Then Mason Kinahan said his thoughts based on reports from training camp. Ahmed won't be the week 1 starter at kicker. Let's go ahead and get that out the way. We can go ahead and put money on that. He also said not going to react to any O-line or D-line stuff until tomorrow, first day of pads. Good point, like we talked about early in this video. And then he said secondary competition is going to be cinema over the next couple of weeks. And then he also ended it with fans are excited. And then you have my boy Bleeding Burgundy and Gold. He brought up a lot of points. Just to run through them real quick. He said, finally home from Ashburn, some observations, because he went to practice and saw it himself. Just give Jayden the QB1 reps, please. Mariota is cheeks. I'm with him. Austin Eckler still has a lot of juice. We've been hearing this from multiple people. This guy seems to have found a fountain of youth somewhere. Wiley is cooked, so maybe he's hurt. I don't know. Tariq Castro-Fields got some work with the ones today. Wow. Derek Forrest might want to start looking over his shoulder. I mean, it does sound like it's Quan Martin and Jeremy Chin. We'll see. Forbes' weight game is evident. Doesn't seem to have lost a lot of speed either. That's excellent news. Samuel Cosmi is in for an all-pro year. He's the clear leader of the O-line. I'm right with you. Brandon Coleman is huge. Jeremy Chin, too. And then he ended it with Jamin Davis might want to start learning Canadian. Ooh, that's not... We're hearing from multiple people, from Craig Hoffman, from Bleeding Burgundy and Gold, guys that have been going to the practices, that it's not looking good for Jamin Davis right now. He must be getting locked up in those edge rusher drills against offensive tackles right now. Not looking good. Also, at a certain point in practice, Jamison Crowder had to use the fans' porta potty in the middle of training camp. Like, it must have been really bad. He really had to go to the point he couldn't even hold it till after practice was done. You know, practice is only from like 9 to 11, but at some point he really had to go. He had to use the same porta potty that fans were using. Of course, a lot of fans were looking at him and were curious what was going on. But at the end of practice, you have Jayden Daniels and Terry McLaurin taking pictures with the fans, signing things and things like that. They are the men of the people. You can see Jayden Daniels in like the middle, somewhat towards the right, Terry McLaurin all the way to the far right of the picture. And then you also have this clip of Jayden Daniels signing things for fans, and this is like it's a 1 and 17 second clip. I'm not gonna give y'all the entire clip because I know y'all don't want to be here all day, but it's just a clip of him signing things for the fans. Shouts out to Jayden Daniels for that, man. He's a real one, man. He's going down the line, like kid by kid, making sure he doesn't try to miss too many people at all. He's taking his time, smiling and everything. Hey, man, that's the quarterback of the people. That's our franchise quarterback. I love it. Luke McCaffrey was doing the same thing. Here's a 12-second clip of him making sure that he signs things, says hello to the fans. He spent a ton of time after practice showing love to the fans and things like that. That's what's up. That's your starting quarterback. That's one of your top receivers, and then that's your face of your franchise who's already been here for several years, and Terry McLaurin, all giving back to the fans, taking time out of their day that they can be spending with their own family to show love to the fans who came out to the first day of practice. I love it. But yeah, man, that's the end of this video. Please get in the comment section. Let me know how you feel about everything discussed in this video. Please stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Make sure you stay tuned for all of the content. I really appreciate y'all pulling up for each and every one of these training camp breakdowns, man. I do whatever I can to get these to y'all as soon as possible, but between getting all of the notes together from all of the different people who go to the practices, all of the different clips, the editing, and then even after I'm done recording, it takes like another hour to edit, then it takes like another hour or two, usually 2 hours, to once I'm done and I'm trying to upload it to YouTube for it to fully upload for y'all to actually be able to see it. So if y'all are wondering why it takes me so long to get these videos out, that's kind of like a behind the scenes reasoning. And so make sure y'all just stay tuned. I appreciate y'all staying patient with me. Of course, do not leave this video without leaving a like, and of course let me know in the comment section how you feel about everything discussed in this video. There were a lot of opinions in this video. Let me know which ones you agree or disagree with and why, and all of that type of stuff. Let me know if there are any players that we did not talk about in this video that you would like for us to, you know, really try to focus on and break down in another training camp breakdown. So stay tuned for all of that. I really appreciate y'all. Stay tuned for another breakdown because there will be a practice tomorrow that will be open to fans. Like I already said, it's going to be the first fully padded practice, so definitely pull up for that. I will be doing a breakdown just like I did with this one for that one tomorrow as well. So stay tuned. I really appreciate y'all. I'm gonna catch y'all later. I'm out.